Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Book of Two Ways. As if life weren't hard enough already, the ancient Egyptians had to contend with a mighty difficult afterlife. Ancient Egyptians believed that after their death, they would awaken to an afterworld of peril and hardship. They thought the only way to reach eternal paradise was to jump through a spiritual obstacle course, have their heart weighed by a giant monster, and then sit down for an interview with Osiris, god of death. Only if everything went well would they be allowed into the land beyond. This land was called Rostau, and there were two ways of getting to it. According to ancient Egyptian texts, you could either reach Rostau by land or by sea. Either way, the only chance you had to pull it off was if you had a map of the underworld. This map came in the form of a text called the Book of Two Ways. Archaeologists recently discovered a copy of this ancient text. It's the oldest version ever found from 4,000 years ago. The new archaeological discovery was described in the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology. Rita Lucarelli, an Egyptology curator at the University of California, says the Egyptians were obsessed with all forms of life. To them, death was only the beginning. They created books, maps, spells, incantations, and myths to make sense of what would happen to them when they reached the other world. In 2012, archaeologists found the Book of Two Ways inside a burial shaft in Deir el-Bersha. It wasn't a book in the traditional sense, but was written on the inside of an ancient sarcophagus. The sarcophagus belonged to a woman of high society named Ankh. The book described Ankh's journey after death. It said she would most likely encounter a ring of fire early in her journey. Later, she would deal with demons and perhaps more fire. But she was protected from all the fire by spells she could cast, which were also written in the text. Ancient Egyptians thought if they wrote spells inside someone's coffin, that person would be able to use them on the other side. And now for number 9. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Matt Stan and Victoria Lopez. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 9. The Osiris Tomb. While the world is fixated on the Great Pyramid of Giza, there is an entire world hidden just below it that barely anyone knows about. In 1999, Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass discovered a mysterious tomb underneath the pyramids called the Tomb of Osiris. Some people think it was the tomb of Osiris himself, the Egyptian god of the dead. The tomb is quite intense, moving down from ground level into shaft A and down to level 1. When the archaeologists searched this level, they found nothing. It was completely empty. They had to continue down the second shaft, shaft B, to level 2. Here they discovered a room with 6 individual chambers carved from the hard stone walls. But there wasn't much to be found other than pottery shards and small figurines that had once been buried with the dead. Basalt sarcophagi were discovered in 3 of the chambers with badly decomposed skeletal remains. But it's unclear who these individuals were, only that they were buried around 525 BC. They are still just nameless mummies. From level 2, the tomb proceeds down shaft C to level 3. This is the lowest chamber of the Osiris shaft, about 100 feet beneath the surface. The lowest chamber is more of a subterranean gathering hall. It is an immense space, with huge ceilings and a lot of room to move around. Inside this subterranean hall, the team discovered a perfectly preserved sarcophagus. It was so big and so impressive, it must have belonged to someone very important. But when archaeologists opened it, they found it empty. Scraps of pottery recovered on the 3rd level suggest the tomb was created during the 6th Dynasty, between 2355 and 2195 BC. The person buried in this place has never been officially identified. Conspiracy theorists think it was Osiris himself, or at least a human manifestation of the god. It may have been that Osiris, like Jesus Christ, was a real historical figure buried here. But again, there is still no concrete evidence. Number 8. Who was Methuselah? If you had to guess which character in the Bible lived the longest life, you would most likely think of Adam. After all, Adam was the first man on Earth. Maybe. He should have had the longest life, followed by the generations after him. but Adam only lived 930 years. Even Noah lived longer than that, at 950. Seth, Adam's son, lived 912 years. Then Enoch, Adam's grandson, lived only 905 years. But the oldest man in the Bible isn't a well-known character. His name is Methuselah, and he lived to be 969 years old. Methuselah was the son of Enoch, born 693 years after Adam. Enoch played a critical part in the Book of Enoch, though this isn't an official biblical text. The Book of Enoch is a forbidden work, full of strange stories about abominations, lustful angels, and black magic giants. But Enoch is also mentioned briefly in Genesis. Genesis 5 says Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more. Methuselah then had his own son, Lamech, who would have a son named Noah. Noah was the one who built the ark to save humanity and the animals, and in the same year as the flood, Methuselah died. But why did Methuselah have such a long life? Was it something he did, or was it just a coincidence that found its way into the Bible? Some biblical experts say it was a matter of faith. In the Book of Enoch, Methuselah is so faithful to God, he becomes a channel through which the people of earth can communicate with Enoch in the heavenly realm. Enoch reveals cosmic secrets to the mouth of Methuselah, his living son, and predicts the flood coming to destroy the earth. Adam was the first man, biblically speaking, and as recognized by the church. But the people spawned by Adam and Eve mostly perished in the Great Flood. Because Methuselah was Noah's grandfather, and Noah repopulated the earth after the flood, it would make Methuselah the direct ancestor of every living human. Did you know this already? Let me know in the comments. Number 7. Ley Lines of the Ancient World. If you look at many of the most important ancient monuments in Britain, France, and other places in Europe, they can be connected in a straight line. By running a line from one monument to the next, they almost all make perfectly straight arrows across the land. These are known as flight paths, geographical markers that were placed intentionally along the same lines of sight. They were first noticed in the early 1900s by amateur archaeologist Alfred Watkins. He published his findings in 1925 and theorized ancient humans built megaliths and other important structures in straight lines on purpose. He referred to these as ley lines, but Alfred didn't hypothesize any kind of magical properties being attributed to the lines. He thought they may have been used for easy navigation. The monuments were like signs on a trading route. There are a lot of different examples, but one of the most compelling is the Michael Line in England. Linda Moulton Howe, a documentary filmmaker and investigative journalist, says the Michael Line is a straight and measurable line cutting across the majority of England. Linda says the magnetic field can be measured all along the borders of the line, higher than any other areas around it. Researchers believe ley lines hold special properties. The theory is that all along these invisible lines, energy is coming out of the ground, and that's why the ancients built their monuments on them. Nobody has ever been able to truly understand the energy of ley lines. Plenty of mainstream archaeologists say they don't even exist, and that it's all wishful thinking. But the truth is irrefutable. There are places in the world where you can draw a straight line between dozens of important archaeological sites. It's true. And some say they have picked up electromagnetic signals and interference from energy along these lines. But how the ancients used that energy is anyone's guess. Do you have any theories about how ancient people used ley lines? Let me know in the comments, and hit subscribe while you're at it. Number 6. The Book of Giants. Enoch was a very well-known figure to the ancient people of the world. In the days before Christ, Enoch was a major celebrity. Even though he was only mentioned briefly in the book of Genesis, he appears in tons of other lost biblical anthologies. Modern scholars know he was important simply for how many stories he appeared in before the New Testament. The religious text most people know about is the Book of Enoch, complete with over 100 chapters. There are still original copies of it preserved in the Ethiopic language. The Book of Enoch was written some centuries before Jesus Christ. Copies were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls, proving ancient people thought it was a very important religious manuscript. But there was another book as well that was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls in which Enoch played a large part. It's called the Book of Giants. The Book of Giants is very similar to the Book of Enoch, only it's a whole separate thing. It retells part of the story of the Book of Enoch, but goes into much more detail about the lives of the giants that once lived on this planet. If all these different biblical texts are to be taken at their word, life was a lot different before the flood. Human beings lived for hundreds of years, and angels and humans also interacted with one another. Angels were divine creatures of heaven, and humans multiplied across the earth and lived in peace. But then the angels became obsessed. They lusted after human women, forcing them into an unholy union. The unnatural breeding between the two species created giants that were over 400 feet high. The naughty angels were cast out of heaven, wicked and corrupt. Giants then oppressed the humans and ruled as our cruel overlords. It became such misery for humans on earth that God sent a flood to drown the giants, and he cast the angels into the void. In the Book of Giants, we get more specific details of their exploits. The book talks about how Enoch tried to reach an understanding between God and the giants before God settled on flooding the world. Do you think giants once existed on Earth? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 5. The Lizard Men of Mesopotamia. Civilization as we know it began in Mesopotamia about 7,000 years ago with the civilization of Sumer. It started in the Ubaid Period, 6500 to 4100 BC. Some have tried to separate the Ubaid as a different culture, but they were just the earliest form of Sumerians. They lived in large villages, simple mud houses, and practiced some of the earliest forms of farming. They were domestic people, experimental farmers practicing agriculture for what was likely the first time in human history. These small Ubaid villages would eventually develop into towns. They would dream up gods and create religions, and by the Uruk period, 6,000 years ago, they had started to really develop. The early Dynastic period and the world's first metropolis of Ur all came into being about 5,000 years ago. But what happened at the beginning, around 5000 BC, for humans to suddenly become so-called civilized? It might have something to do with the mysterious Ubaid lizard men found in the ruins of Sumer in modern Iraq. Archaeologists uncovered these unusual artifacts in the destroyed Sumerian cities of Ur and Eridu, but most of the lizard figures came from Al-Ubaid, excavated by Harry Reginald Hall in 1919. The figurines show what can only be described as reptilian creatures. These are human-shaped lizard people, both male and female, dressed in some peculiar clothing. Some of the figurines appear to be wearing helmets. Some look like they have suits on with shoulder padding. Others hold a staff or a scepter. Many of the women figures are holding milk-suckling babies. These children are also seemingly lizardish. No one has ever come up with a reasonable explanation for the lizard figurines. Ancient alien enthusiasts say that these figurines are proof of alien overlords. These figurines could represent extremely intelligent reptilian beings from another planet. They may have been the ones that came down to Earth and gave primitive humans the spark needed to begin society. To others, that theory is outrageous. The ancient people of the Ubaid period had some reverence toward these beings, but they were most likely representing their early gods. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 4. The Secret History of Mars. Barry DiGregorio is a researcher from Buckingham University who recently claimed NASA is hiding fossilized footprints of extraterrestrials on the surface of Mars. Barry works at the Center for Astrobiology. He is a real scientist with a background in the cosmos. He's supposedly planning to release a report that will reveal all the details NASA has been hiding to the public. This report hasn't been published yet, but Barry maintains it's on its way. According to what he's already said, NASA's images beamed back by their Curiosity rover show obvious evidence of fossils just like the ones we have here on Earth. NASA has fervently denied it, and other scientists have called very controversial. But he says that if he's right, Mars was once home to alien life. It may not have been little green men with probes, but some kind of alien organisms. Barry says the images of Mars show the telltale signs of animal activity, such as footprints, burrows, and trails. He hasn't identified the remains of any creatures, but has noticed evidence of their activity. These are trace fossils. Some of them were found in the Gale Crater, which likely hosted a series of lakes several billions of years ago. Barry believes the aliens that lived here were similar to the creatures alive during Earth's Ordovician Period, which occurred between 485 and 444 million years ago. They wouldn't have been big, scary dinosaurs, but soft-bodied, complex life forms like what used to thrive in our oceans. Do you think there was life on Mars? Number 3. Teotihuacan Circuit Board. Teotihuacan is an ancient city near modern Mexico City built by a mysterious ancient civilization over 2,000 years ago. Archaeological evidence tells us Teotihuacan was founded around 400 BC, with some of the biggest buildings being completed in 300 AD. Nobody knows the name of the people who lived here. They vanished just after they reached their peak in the 5th century AD, with all 200,000 residents dispersing to parts unknown. It's a massive mystery for so many reasons. Where did the people come from who built the city? Why did they build it? And why did they flee? Some suspect there was a great flood in the valley that pushed the citizens out, while others believe they ran in fear of an erupting volcano. By the time the Toltec culture appeared around 900 AD, the people of Teotihuacan were long gone. The Aztec were so floored when they discovered the city that they thought it was built by the gods. We know based on physical evidence that priests here practiced ritual sacrifice. They murdered people and animals as offerings to their gods. In 1989, scientists found 18 victims of sacrifice buried in a pit just outside the temple of Quetzalcoatl, and they were hardly the only victims. This was a complex society who constructed one of the strangest ancient cities in the world. They arranged their city like a grid, with over 2,000 apartment compounds, multiple pyramids, religious temples, and palaces for the nobles and head priests. What you might not know is that Teotihuacan's grid layout looks identical to the grid layout of a circuit board. When looking at the city from above, it's clearly laid out in exactly the same fashion as a highly advanced computer circuit board. Could this have been a coincidence? If it was on purpose, why would the builders do such a thing? Some believe the civilization who built Teotihuacan had advanced knowledge of electronics, despite never having built anything electrical themselves. Others think it's reaching, and that the whole circuit board theory is wishful thinking. What do you think happened to the people of Teotihuacan? Let me know in the comments. Number 2. The Pyramid on the Moon. A pyramid has been spotted on the moon. Out of all the places you wouldn't expect to find a pyramid, the moon is pretty high on the list. And yet, according to YouTuber Pachito Dominic, there is a pyramid-shaped object on the moon, clearly visible in NASA satellite images. Since the YouTuber first uploaded the video showcasing the proof, the moon pyramid has gotten a lot of attention. All kinds of crazy conspiracy theories have sprouted since then. Some are saying the moon has its own ancient civilization on it. Others think the Egyptians somehow built pyramids on the moon and Earth. Here's what we know about the pyramid, at least what we have as verified fact. There is indeed something that looks like it could be a pyramid sitting in a giant moon crater. This is easily viewable in the NASA satellite pictures. However, there is no evidence it's an artificially created object. It could be nothing but a shadow, captured at such an angle and in such a way it looks like a monument. It isn't irrefutable evidence of an alien civilization constructing pyramids. It is, however, extremely strange. NASA says the pyramid and other weird anomalies detected on the lunar surface are nothing to be worried about. They say it's all a symbological phenomenon called pareidolia, when your brain tricks your eyes into seeing something familiar in a completely ordinary shape or pattern. It's the thing in your brain that makes a cloud look like a fire-breathing dragon. or even a flying saucer. Number 1. Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus was a legendary figure from the Hellenistic period between 323 and 31 BC. It's unclear whether this person was indeed a person or simply a mythical figure. Some scholars have suggested he was a combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth, and was merely a character in ancient stories. Yet he is also attributed with authoring great philosophical works, medieval alchemical texts, and some extraordinarily strange writings on magic. He was behind the creation of Hermeticism, a philosophical religion based around the teachings in his books. It's hard to dismiss Hermes Trismegistus as a myth when he had so many of his own published works. Some think his real name was Hermes, and that he was the real Hermes whom the Greek god was based upon. Whatever you choose to believe, there is no denying that Hermes Trismegistus texts are very real. They are as a collection called the Hermetica and speak on a wide variety of subjects from astrology to magic. The oldest were written in Greek and date back to the 2nd century BC. The texts were later translated into the popular languages of the day, such as Arabic and Latin. One of the most famous examples of Hermetica is the Emerald Tablet, which appeared in Arabic in the Middle Ages. It's unclear if this was really written by Hermes, or if the Emerald Tablet was just given his name, since it was a text containing great alchemical knowledge. Most of the earliest works are concentrated on the relationship between humans, the universe, and the gods. There are lots of Jewish ideas, lots of ideas that clearly come from ancient Greek myths, anthropological ideas, theology, moral dilemmas, spiritual realizations, and heavenly divination. Magic and wisdom are intertwined in the Hermetica. Some scholars think the works were written by a secret group of Egyptian priests, ones who wanted only to share their wisdom with the world. To make their texts more accepted, they attributed their work to Hermes Trismegistus. Thanks for watching! What's your favorite historical mystery? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!